while I understand the frustrations, you will not see me advocating for actual like hired community managers to be fired based off their social media, just because I feel like I have a unique perspective on that, because I was one that was fired based off of a social media post from like 8 years ago.
Video game community managers have been a very hot topic the last month, 6 weeks. A lot of fingers have been pointed at the video game community managers. Starting specifically earlier this month, we saw some headlines associated with the Star Wars Outlaw community manager, Shauna Jones, who had some not nice things to say about gringos and those white people on numerous social media posts, right? Then it followed up with all the nonsense that's happened the last few days with Helldivers and how they came in, and you'd see comments from community managers really just kind of putting down its player base here, talking about, oh, you need to just create your new account over on Sony. It's so easy, you idiots. And then they, oh crap, we got to kind of take a step back here,
right?
So we've seen
Didn't
a
they
lot
also
of
make like false allegations against Grums, like some kind of like you claimed that he had done something or whatever, and apparently that person, I was there. You go. Go ahead and read that.
So the moderator, Purple Squidgion, falsely claims that Grums had SA'd many people, and then falsely claimed that I attacked people and their families. And then they currently banned anybody, to the point to where we saw this yesterday with Blabs. If you would just put the name Grums in the Helldiver server, you would be locked out, right, Blabs?
Yeah, you couldn't type it in. It was a banned word.
We saw that yesterday in this whole situation. And it's really kind of put a very bright spotlight on community managers. So with that said, I want to open the floor to Kara and first get your thoughts on all this nonsense that's happened over the last few days, last month or so. Just your overall thoughts. Let's start here. Describe the role of a community manager to those who don't know.
So a brief TLDR of a community manager is you are the liaison basically between your customer base, your community, and the company. So whether it be the developer, the support team, whatever. If there is an issue, it is your job to be the voice from either side when something needs communicated. One thing that I think a lot of what is the right word? A lot of miscommunication that's going on right now is a lot of community managers that are being called out right now are not paid community managers for a company. They like to call themselves community managers, but basically they're just a Reddit mod or a Discord mod. And there is a difference. They are not the voice to the company. Like, this is somebody who's just like, okay, well, I'm going to make this forum where we can all collab and talk, but that's not a official voice of the company. And I think that's where a lot of misrepresentation for community managers is getting directed towards, are those particular individuals who do not have the authority to make statements for the company, to make decisions, or to address the community with decisions, anything like that. I think that is a big thing. You are not a representation of the company. And I think that there are a lot that are out there that Grums has been pointing out that maybe aren't the most politically correct individuals on the internet. But it's just for community managers, like, a majority of your job is scoping out what the community is saying. Your job is to take that information, compile it into a format to provide to the company. And if the company has a response, it is your job to word that in a way that best that is the best tone of the company tone. Like, you do not have your own personal tone when relaying information from the company to the community. But I think that is a lot of it. Go ahead.
So in a situation like that, if you're serving as more or less the middleman between the community and the company, have you seen instances, or are there instances, I feel like there have been instances where certain information may be left out to fit your personal narrative as a person? You think that's a common theme, or is that something that has happened or that you are aware of or know of?
I will be honest, I personally have not been I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to other community managers in the space. I have, like, ever since I was let go of LRG, I kind of just distanced myself, just because I never really was one that was a integrated part of the community manager sphere. I knew of people, and I do think it's because I was a lot less progressive than others in the space who were a little bit more vocal about their personal beliefs and not the beliefs of the company. And I think that's where a lot of the animosity is coming from. Is it's understandable to not enjoy it. And sorry, I'm trying to think of, like, the best way to word this. But
Well, do you feel that
I have a few 4-letter words I can help you throw in there.
go for it. I want to hear one. Do it. Put you on the spot. Do it.
No, that's all right. We just did the BattleTech episode where we talked about one community manager, like, basically going into business for themselves. That's a prominent example, I think, of what we're talking about here. But yeah, it's like community managers are kind of. It sounds like you're describing community managers as like a junction point between the community and the company. Whereas I think the distinguishing factor with a lot of these sort of slacktivists who are slotting themselves in the position is, improperly used, that position stops being a junction point and becomes a bottleneck, right? It becomes like an easy point you can triangulate and sort of assail people with whatever ideology. You can skew the perspective of the company or whatever. We definitely saw that with Helldivers, because then after a lot of this popped off with Helldivers 2, after all of this happened with Helldivers 2, there were actual developers from the company that came out and, like, voiced solidarity with the gamers. They were like, oh, no, we're not about this. This person doesn't speak for us. And apparently that person got demoted too.
Really?
Oh, are you talking about the developer that got demoted, or the community manager got demoted?
Community manager, yeah.
Yes. Are you talking about the one for Helldivers, the one that was a mod? You're talking about
I'm talking about a mod, but that's the tough thing.
And everything,
yeah, that's the tough thing, because it's interchangeable.
One thing I will say that I experienced whenever I was a community manager was, if you gave mods any type of power, more than likely they didn't know how to handle that. And more often than not, it was abused. If you did not have very strict guidelines on how to behave within the Discord, the Reddit, like, they had to be very open about the fact that they do not speak for the company. Like, you are your own person. You are just here to keep things from being honestly aggressive towards one another. Because that was the biggest issue that I saw in the LRG Discord, was people would fight. They'd bicker all the time over, I mean, there's always going to be that sense of tribalism, and their job was to keep that from getting out of hand. It was not their job to speak for the company or to make any types of decisions for the community. That was their job, just to keep the animosity to a minimum. That is the role of a moderator in the Discord, Reddit, whatever.
Right.
The community manager's job is to take the key points that the community is pointing out, key topics, and seeing what they can do to better alleviate a possibly difficult situation.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen, to interrupt, but what kind of training goes on in this? Like, do like CMs have lots of training at all, or are they just kind of like thrown in there and be like, good luck?
Majority of it, I'll be completely honest, I was kind of thrown into it whenever, because I didn't have any previous experience outside of being a content creator, outside of being a streamer. And so, but in that, you have to have some type of experience to build a community and to handle discords, know how to handle situations with an even hand for both parties, that kind of stuff. And so that did play a part of it.
Right.
Whenever I got brought on to be a community manager, there was that aspect of it. And you could prove that aspect, prove those skills by providing like examples of your community. I think that did play a part of it. But I'll be honest, like I did not have a whole lot of training for community management. Like whenever I came in, I was okay, here is the tone of the company. This is typically like this is how we want to present ourselves. Like obviously we don't want to be robotic, but we don't want to be too casual. Kind of have to find that middle ground. And you also want to make sure that you aren't alienating anybody from any side, because the more people that you are welcoming to, the more money you make. And I think that's why I succeeded, is because even though there were particular conversations that were being had in the Discord or on social media, I was very even-handed and I did not pick a side. I was just like, hey, I respect your opinion, but it's time to squash this conversation. This isn't the place for it. If you want to continue this conversation, take it to DMs. This isn't the place for it. And so, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So you putting out something like this, anyone who's a fan of X,
I would immediately remove their moderator status.
Right. So
that's the mods do not have that power. They do not have that power. And that, yeah, I instantly would have revoked their mod status, or they would have been reprimanded of some sort, which obviously they did get reprimanded. They went from what, lead mod or
they went from like head mod to just a normal bog standard basic bitch mod.
Do you
so go ahead.
Do you feel that that oftentimes I have a theory when it comes to community managers, right? And people who are in that kind of position, who've never been in that position. I feel like for the first time, a lot of these people are given some sort of power or some semblance of power, and that goes to their head in a major way, where they feel like, I'm a leader in this community. I need to act like it, and thus I will thrust my mighty sword to the ground when I need to. Like that's what it feels like. And they want to establish themselves. It's like, it's a power play for a lot of these folks.
And sadly that is like, you do have to have a discussion, be like, hey, you're here to benefit the community, not to promote yourself. And I think that's where a lot of the mods have difficulty understanding, because whenever if you want to, if some of the community comes over to if they happen to upon a stream of yours, or if you're live, if it shows that you're streaming on your status on the side of Discord or something, and somebody from the community pops over, I think that's perfectly fine. But you don't want to be in a community dedicated Discord promoting yourself. And like, I think that's where a lot of them have that difficulty, because they see like, okay, these are my people. Like I want to capitalize off this as much as possible, but it's not the time or the place for it. And that distinction is difficult for people, especially for people who are just coming from being a mod and nothing more. They think they think they have more power than they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, and I agree with one of these statements in the chat that says bad mods make worse managers. It's because there is that they haven't been taught. They just, unless you provide very distinct guidelines of, hey, this is what your expectations are, they will run rampant. And I think that can really, really be detrimental to your game or your company or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like the difference between a good manager. We've all worked for different managers, I'm sure, over the course of our life. We've all had managers that were good. They just led by example. They would never ask you to do something they wouldn't do, right? Like those kind of people. And then you just had the armchair dictators who never did anything and ordered people around, and right, they all but had a writing crop, right? Like those kind of guys. So that's kind of what it sounds like.
And I'm not saying like I was like the most amazing community manager or anything. I just tried to be very even-handed with the community is what my goal was. My goal was to make everyone feel welcome and to make them feel like they weren't talking to corporate game company trademark, whatever it was. I wanted them to feel like they were talking to a person. And if you do put a face to a company, it does tend to make people a little bit more sympathetic or empathetic towards the company because you have that sense of like togetherness, or it's just like that sense of humanity. And like this, you're here to do something because you love it, not because you're trying to financially benefit off of it for your own personal reasoning. And it's just it's very difficult to I'll admit it's difficult to see a lot of like these community managers that are being attacked because yes, they do have very very obscure or very aggressive takes on things, but it's just
you see this response from Grums here. He says, props to Twinbeard, the only good community manager for Helldivers who helped keep everyone calm and informed during the PR crisis and never made it about himself. And this is kind of echoing what you said, Kara. That's what a good CM should be doing.
Yep. That is the goal. That should 100% be the goal. Is your job isn't to, and I will say, like, I can understand that some community managers are going to feel protective over a brand. They are probably going to react off of emotion rather than data, whatever you want to call it, or rational thinking. And that is it's something you've seen. I've seen a lot of different community managers trying to do lately. Is they're reacting emotionally rather than for the company.
Whoa. So the emotional the emotional reaction instead of I don't know, thinking logically. It's almost,
how dare you?
Like, yes, absolutely. Hey, Flynn
Sounds like emotional damage.
Flynn came in and says, I have a question why we need community managers sometimes. They're either decent or terrible at their job, and there's no in between. Helldivers 2 example right there. Do you feel like how many, I don't know, I would just love to hear, obviously, this is your job, Kara. Your job is to be the liaison. This seems to be for lack of a better term, we've talked about this like an entry level or a lower level position, when I think it actually should be the totally different. It should be a very high level position within a community because you have a very important job. And as we've seen over and over again over the past 6 weeks, month or so, a community manager can really fuck things up really quick, right? And I think that you should be compensated well if you are a good community manager, and if you put the emphasis on hiring a good qualified person, like they're more than just a community manager. They could have a very,
they're the voice of the company.
Yes.
Yeah, and they can calm things down when things aren't doing well. Like I remember when Thief 4 right? The fourth Thief game, the one that came out in 2014, the big bomb, when that was being developed, it took a long time to come out. They announced it in like 2009, didn't come out till 2014. It was a long wait. And they must have gone through 3 different community managers, and they kept quitting on them because it was just like, how do you relay info that isn't there? And in the absence of info, the community kind of started cannibalizing itself. And right, like, you get a bad community manager in there, you can make a bad situation even worse. And honestly, that was, I'm convinced to this day, the community managers at Eidos Montreal kind of did that development team a disservice and actually gave them an incorrect perception of what people were expecting from a game. And that was part of the problem with the final product. Honestly, it wound up actually being reflected in what a turd that was.
And I will say, being a community manager is not an easy job. Like, you are basically an internet punching bag.
Right.
That is your job, is to be the internet punching bag. And it gets overwhelming. It gets old. It will start to negatively impact your life if you let it. And that was actually one reason why I was stepping down as community manager for Limited Run, is because I was over it. Like, whenever you log in and you see nothing but negative comments with like sprinkles of positive here and there, it really starts to spread over to other aspects of your life, because all you're seeing is the negative. That's what you're accustomed to seeing, and you get overwhelmed and you get stressed. And I think that it is not an easy job. So I do understand the frustrations that a lot of the CMs experience, especially if the company is not being transparent with their fan base. If you are not transparent with your fan base, you make your community managers' lives a living hell. And that is one thing I will always advocate for with like Rippaverse stuff, is we have to be transparent. Like, if we are not transparent, it is a lose-lose situation.
Right. Well, you mentioned kind of the punching bag nature of the position, right? And I know we only got you for another minute or so, so we'll kind of start putting a bow on this. But don't you feel that, like, Kara, I've met you in person. I've given you hugs. You're wonderful. You're very personable. You're nice. You're a great person, right?
You haven't met me. You don't know, Razor.
I said the first time I met you, I was like, it's like, I think there are forest animals that dress you in the morning. Like,
no, it's just Pikachu's.
Right? No, it's Pokemon. You have them trapped in balls.
But the point of this is that, don't you feel that if you're going to be an internet punching bag, and that you're the one who's going to be taking the brunt of the customer, don't you feel like you should not be, as Matthew Hammond puts it over on with the direct donation, you shouldn't be like the community manager Tom Smikowski from Office Space, where he's like, I already told you, I deal with the goddamn customers, so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. Don't you think you should probably have people skills if you're working as a community manager?
Yes, you absolutely have to have people skills. Like, without a doubt. So have you ever watched what is it? It's the show on Apple TV. It's like Mythic Quest.
Yeah.
The community manager episode that they had was one of the most relatable things I'd ever experienced. Like, whenever somebody, like, they have these kids come in and they're like, I want to do what you do. She's like, no, do something else.
You're basically the Iraqi information minister. Remember that guy?
No, I don't, Razor. Please tell me more.
Actually, the Republican Guard just won a key battle. Disregard the explosions behind me, please. Right?
Oh my God.
That guy.
So thick skin does seem to be a requirement of the job, but
thick skin and being empathetic. I think you have to have a balance of both to be a successful community manager.
Then what the fuck is wrong with all these community? I feel like all these community managers have like the thinnest skin in the world, and everything you're talking about as far as like the skill sets you need, right? The idea of having people skills, the ability to be emotionally strong, the ability to communicate well with people. It seems like so many of these community managers have none of those skills. So how are these people being hired, Kara?
Because these developers don't really know what the actual job of a community manager is. And a lot of them are
Do
going
you think there's
into
a diversity hire element to it? Maybe they're not hiring based on qualifications every time?
I don't know what you're talking about. That definitely doesn't happen in the games industry.
Right. They're not hired unless they have the correct Planeteer ring.
But but I will say this, and I know I talked to you about this, Craig, before the show, is like, while I understand the frustrations, you will not see me advocating for actual like hired community managers to be fired based off their social media, just because I feel like I have a unique perspective on that, because I was one that was fired based off of a social media post from like 8 years ago.
Right.
And because I followed a handful of people. And so I would be, to me, for my personal experience, would feel hypocritical. And I do not want to be a hypocrite with that. You won't see me endorsing going after any community managers. And it's not like you guys do you, but I personally don't feel like it is something that I could really endorse for myself. So,
and that's understandable for sure. With that said, I think there's the difference between going after and being critical, right? The idea of being critical of the way a situation was handled is a lot different than just directly going after somebody because they think of a certain way, or wanting them fired because they follow a certain account, right?
Now, I will say, if you want to confront or provide some constructive criticism towards somebody, yes, I think that's fine. But I don't think it is your position to go directly to a company and say, hey, I don't like this person, fire them. I think unless you're bringing to the table, hey, this person has done this, and this, within the community, then you can go to them and say, hey, this is how this person is portraying themselves within your own community forums. You might need to have a discussion with them. That, I feel, would be the best way to go about it.
Well, I think that, yes, going to people and actually showing proof of why you feel they haven't done a good job, I think is paramount. You can't just be, it goes back to, why limited earned games, fucked you over, right? Like, you're right. You'd be a hypocrite otherwise, but you weren't fired because you did a poor job. You were fired because you followed something on social media, right? Whereas in specifically this Helldivers 2 situation, they should be fired because they did a horrible job. They've done a horrible job, and it has nothing to do with their ideology. It strictly has to do with the way they handled the situation, or at least they should have a firm talking to. Whether it's not my job to decide whether they've been fired or not, but they should absolutely have a firm talking to about what their role specifically is, and how they can do a better job next time. Because there may be another next time, and that's what the community manager's job is to handle those situations. So. Yep.
It's and it's also on the community manager to discuss what the expectations are with the mods, and they gotta know to keep that out of there. So.
All right. Well, look, I know you got to go, Kara. So we appreciate you coming in.
I'm sorry.
No.
And stay out.
That's right. Go back to
and
your
stop stalking Razor Fist windows.
You can't make me.